Hello, I'm Ellen Bintz, coming today from Wheaton, Illinois, in the USA. Welcome to Impact, a podcast about how we can each bring about real change in the world and getting practical in making that happen.
And hello, I'm Clive Johnson, coming today from the village of East Hoathly, East Sussex, as it is in East England, in the UK. A special welcome if you're listening for the first time, and a big thank you to our new subscribers. Each week, we look at one aspect of how we can connect our hearts to offer healing to others with our collective intention, prayers, and meditation, and go behind the headlines of a critical happening in our world that needs our attention right now.
In today's episode, we take one of these regular deep dives to more fully understand and tune in with something many of us may know only a little about, and see where we might hone in with our prayers and intentions. And as we record, it's May 28th, 2025.
I wish the sun was shining where I am. I was thinking this morning, end of May, and we've actually had some good sun, I have to say, sunlight.
It's raining here in Wheaton, Illinois, too.
Raining and cold, yes. There we go. Oh, well, we're not alone. So this year, as regular listeners will know, Global Healing Response has taken the issue of authenticity as its main theme. We've been touching on topics relating to this throughout the year. However, so far, we've mainly focused on authenticity as it relates to individuals. Yet, according at least to some experts, there's also a major authenticity crisis that's affecting institutions and indeed whole societies. We thought then that we should take a look at this today, as always coming back later to see where we might hone in with our intentions and prayers.
So, what is the current social authenticity crisis that some commentators are talking about? Well, the authenticity crisis some refer to, especially some academics and business forums, points to the growing difficulty many of us have in distinguishing what is real, genuine, and trustworthy. This especially is the case regarding online information, digital content, and what some of our politicians and influencers are saying. This crisis is being driven by several interconnected trends: the proliferation of AI generated content, an erosion of trust with the old political system, and shifting social norms that are making it harder than ever to determine what is genuine. This crisis threatens trust, creativity, and the very fabric of how we make sense of navigating our lives. So, it is currently over half of online content is now thought to be AI generated,
Mm.
blurring the line between what is authentic and artificial, and making it increasingly challenging for individuals and organizations to verify the originality and truthfulness of what we encounter online. Since AI models are themselves trained on data that is itself generated by AI, the risk of unreliable information is growing ever increasing.
Yeah, it's quite scary, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
A lot of us just take it as fact
right,
without
right.
challenging. Yeah. In another trend that most of us will be familiar with, fake or inauthentic responses in bot-driven interactions when we seek, oh yes, we know that one, don't we? When we seek to engage with what we may believe is a real person online or on the phone, are eroding confidence in who and what we can trust. Fake voice and image manipulation are also becoming increasingly sophisticated, fooling even some of us who think we can't be deceived. The sheer volume of information many of us process daily makes sifting what is authentic from what is manipulated all the more difficult. Unlikely most of the time, most of us don't have the time or the will to check out everything we're bombarded with. What we may come across, like and share on social media, of course, is very much a part of this. Coupled with the worrying trend in fake data online, there's another peril that's come to the fore in many of our societies: the rise of false claims of some politicians, social media influencers, and others in the public eye that are rarely called out for what they are. Populist politics has often gone hand in hand with a fierce polarization in many of our societies.
Several societies across the globe are now officially noted as being polarized, with divisions manifesting in political, economic, social, and institutional spheres. According to Edelman's Trust Barometer, an extensive annual global survey of public trust conducted in more than 30 countries worldwide and involving tens of thousands of respondents, 6 countries are now considered to be severely polarized, based on perceptions of division and entrenched disagreement among their populations. Argentina tops the list,
Mm.
where a deep economic crisis, high inflation, foreign loan defaults, and persistent government corruption have fueled this polarization, and where only 20% of Argentinians in the latest survey say that they trust their government. That was surprising to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. Staggering. Yeah.
Second is Colombia, where political instability and social inequality have led to entrenched divides. And third, not surprisingly, the United States, where heightened political and ideological conflict, especially between Democrats and Republicans, has led to a declining trust in institutions and between people. Next is South Africa, where only 22% of South Africans surveyed say that they trust their government. And then Spain, surprisingly,
Mm.
where political fragmentation and economic challenges are very marked. And Sweden, also surprising to us,
Yes.
where despite its reputation for being socially well grounded, is now facing rising ideological and cultural divides.
Mm. Mm. I didn't know about this survey. It's fascinating, isn't it? It
It
seems to be
is.
very, very extensive, actually, the samples they take. So it's a well regarded, as it described itself, a barometer of public trust.
Wow.
And well, added to this list are many other countries that are not far behind, that we consider to be moderately polarized and experiencing significant, if currently less extreme divisions, often centered around politics, economic inequality, and social issues. So these include countries such as Brazil, South Korea, Mexico, France, the UK, Japan, Germany, the Netherlands, Italy, Nigeria, Thailand, Kenya, Canada, Australia, and Ireland. Quite a long list there. Populist political parties have gained large support, as we know, in quite a number of those countries, along with others. That's especially the case in Eastern Europe at the moment. Interestingly, it's in nations where there is a higher trust in institutions and a more optimistic economic outlook, such as China, Singapore, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and India, where citizens are less likely to speak about polarization.
Is that out of fear?
It's hard to tell because that would need another question, really. I mean,
Yes.
it may well come into it, or it may well come into the fact there aren't alternatives available. So the opportunity for populist politics to rise is very limited in some of those countries, some of those regimes. There is more filtering in some of those countries of social media. So yes, it's not saying everyone there is necessarily totally happy with the government
Right.
they have, but absolutely they may not have alternatives. But still, this this perception of polarity is very strong, as we see in countries where there is democracy, if you like, where there
Yes.
are changes of government quite regularly, and where there is the opportunity for the more extreme parties to come to the fore and for pretty much anyone to say what they want on social media. Polarization takes various forms, most notably political polarization, where there's sharp ideological divides between parties or factions, often resulting in legislative gridlock, public protests, and contentious elections. Economic and class divides, with inequality, unemployment, and a lack of upward mobility deepening social rifts. In institutional distrust, where there's a low confidence in government, media, and other institutions that has exacerbated divisions, and also in identity conflicts, including disputes over such issues as national identity, immigration, and minority rights, as we've obviously reflected quite often in our own reflections.
Is this growing polarization playing into the authenticity crisis? Well, Social polarization, where groups become increasingly divided along ideological, political, or social lines, is playing a central and destructive role in the current authenticity crisis. It is leading individuals to trust their own group and become suspicious of or hostile toward opposing groups, often without critically examining the factual basis of their beliefs. This makes people more susceptible to accepting misinformation and disinformation that align with their pre existing views as fact, as they are less likely to question information that supports their in group or more likely to reject or ignore facts that challenge their worldview.
Mm.
A lack of dialogue and exposure to different ideologies deepens the divide, creating echo chambers and filter bubbles where only in group perspectives are reinforced. So it is, for example, that many people will only trust news sourced by their preferred news channel or social media groups.
Mm. As we know, polarization has increasingly become rooted not just in policy disagreements, but in identity differences too, being characterized by emotional dislike and even disgust for members of opposing groups of the perceived other, such as migrants. As a result, individuals are exaggerating the differences between groups and becoming more entrenched in their positions, making it harder to engage in open, authentic dialogue. Over time, this process leads to increased stereotyping, discrimination, and even hatred towards so-called outgroups, which erodes trust and authenticity in social interactions and public debate. It's clearly taking us away from the ideals of a beloved community that we've spoken about as being one we would personally will for. Of course, political leaders and social media influencers may exploit the polarity of opinions by using rhetoric that appeals to group fears and anxieties, further deepening divisions and encouraging people only to accept information that confirms their biases and to reject information that does not. Some prominent orators have become very adept at playing this disturbing game, as we know.
Exposure to misinformation further erodes trust in mainstream media, especially when the misinformation aligns with an individual's political beliefs. This dynamic is known as motivated reasoning. I'd never heard that term
No,
before.
no.
Polarization also leads to marked preferences of where we seek out our news, with people influenced by polarized views being more likely to rely on alternative media or social media platforms that cater to their specific viewpoints rather than turning to mainstream channels. Meanwhile, on a personal level, individuals may feel pressured to conform to their in group's views, suppressing their true beliefs to avoid judgment or rejection. This leads to the adoption of a persona or mask rather than authentic self expression. So, the social authenticity crisis may be generating a personal authenticity crisis for many people too.
Interesting, isn't it? Polarization can also significantly impact relationships and social interactions in detrimental ways. As individuals become more entrenched in their beliefs, polarization can lead to social isolation and feelings of loneliness, even within families and close communities. People may distance themselves from those with differing viewpoints, resulting in fewer meaningful interactions and a sense of disconnection. In some cases, families and relationships have broken up over disagreements over political party allegiance. Many of us will be aware of the intensity of differences of views on matters of politics and ideology, and may have witnessed how vitriolic such differences may quickly become. I've certainly been privileged myself to stay with folks from time to time where there's a very, very clear, marked difference of views politically between two partners, for example, which all too often results in arguments whenever there's anything on the news, basically, to trigger it.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So I can see that really, really being very detrimental.
Yes.
Now, in turn, polarization can have profound psychological impacts on individuals, affecting both their mental health and social functioning. Many individuals report heightened emotional distress related to political and social divisions, And some studies show that almost 60% of Americans consider politics a major source of stress, and polarization being linked to increased reports of anxiety, depression, and other emotional issues.
And interestingly, longer term polarization can significantly impact our health, relationships, decision making, and overall well being. Recent research reports that individuals who perceive themselves as politically distant from their communities or the average voter report more days of poor physical and mental health per month. Studies also report that increased polarization leads to uncomfortable environments, avoidance of certain topics, and even reduced time spent together, such as during family gatherings. This social fragmentation is often resulting in feelings of loneliness and isolation, as well as making some people feel alienated from and wary of those in the other, quote, group. At an extreme, so called affective polarization, that is, emotional dislike or distrust of opposing groups, can lead to avoidance, intolerance, and reduced empathy for others, entrenching divisions and limiting opportunities for meaningful dialogue and understanding. This is therefore truly a crisis that we cannot afford to ignore.
No,
And I think we've all experienced it. We're not telling people anything new.
no, no.
Hopefully, we're giving people language to discuss it.
Exactly, exactly. And it's something which has been going on now, isn't it, for quite some time and not
Yeah.
really being properly acknowledged, I don't think. So then, where might we hone in with our intention and prayers? So, as always, we invite you now just to take a few moments, if you can, to become present. As always, if you're not in that situation at the moment, you might want to come back to this part of the podcast. We'll put the point to come back to in the show notes, and find a place where you can be still, allow yourself to connect with your higher self and to invite this flow of loving kindness energy, this desire to bring about change. And these are a number of the themes that came to us on this very important topic. We will that there will be an increasing readiness among all people to listen to others and to be ready to debate rather than ignore, dismiss, or shout down differences of view.
We ask that individuals will be mindful when polarized views lead them toward being hostile toward others or supporting discrimination against or demonizing of opposing groups.
We will for a widespread recognition among citizens in countries that are especially dominated by polarized media that their preferred media channels don't guarantee accuracy simply because they align with their views.
We pray that there will be a movement of authentic, brave leadership among politicians for a stepping forward of role models who are prepared to challenge and call out populist mischief makers, even when they themselves may be at personal risk of abuse, arrest, or worse.
We ask for all social media channel operators to take responsibility in monitoring and regulating repeated posting of false content.
We will for the rapid development and deployment of online tools that can detect and warn against fake and manipulated media.
We ask for widespread education and promotion of awareness of the perils of becoming sold on false claims, especially those promoted by political figures and others in the interests of personal gain.
And this week, as we consider the critical crisis of authenticity affecting many polarized societies, and in the face of increasingly unreliable and deliberately fake information sources that many of us are exposed to, we suggest holding this as our main intention. We will that there will be widespread awareness of the value of working toward a beloved community that celebrates and embraces rather than polarizes and demonizes differences of views and ways of being. Please join us in holding this.
That about wraps it up for this episode. Remember, you can connect with us in the Facebook group and for live intention holding in my daily Insight Timer offerings and with Ellen in the Labyrinth Activist Network's Zoom calls. Details of how to hook up with these are in our show notes. Look out too for our next special topic episode, which we'll be releasing in the next few days. Thank you for listening and for sharing with us in Holding Intentions. We look forward to connecting again next time. In the meantime, thank you, go well, stay safe.
And remember, we're more powerful together.
Impact is presented by Ellen Mintz and Clive Johnson and produced by Impact Productions. Our theme music is by Chris Collins and our logo artwork is by Auto Classic. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible or your favorite podcast provider. We're a non-commercial podcast dedicated to people of any faith tradition or none who yearn for healing in our troubled world. Please pass on the word so others may join us in making an impact. Thank you for listening.